At the final ceremony of the recent March of the Living at Auschwitz, I was quite moved when IDF Chief Cantor, Lieutenant Colonel Shai Abramson, sang the song of the fighting partisans who waged war from the forests. And he sang it in Yiddish.
Als du gehst dem letzten Weg, Gott Stimmen bleiene, verstellen bläuete.
Just like my father and mother sang it when they were fighting partisans in the Polish woods. And they told me that every day they prayed to God to deliver them just one more day. As the cantor's voice pierced the air, I also recalled the brave men who stormed the beaches of Normandy, praying to the heavens as they did. Then the speakers on stage also reminded us and the world that every day the brave men and women of the IDF also pray to God as they fight to preserve life and the nation. We are reminded of the Talmudic injunction for self-defense and warfare to save lives. It is the principle of self-defense and the mandate to preserve life, the principle of Pikuach Nefesh, which overrules all other religious tenets in Judaism. Save life. And then my mind went to Pope Leo XIV, who on Palm Sunday a few weeks ago declared that God, quote, does not listen to the prayers of those who wage war, but rejects them, close quote. Pope Leo says this about the men who stormed Normandy, about every Jew in the IDF, and my parents who fought as partisans. At the same time, he condemns Trump's war to save humanity from nuclear conflagration by religious fanatics in Iran. Pope Leo, who in the heck are you to tell us what prayers God hears? I know the world sees you as a great holy man, but I see you as just another product of the Catholic Church in Chicago, one of the most criminal and corrupt organizations in American history. I'm from Chicago, so you, Pope Leo, know what I know about Chicago. I spent some of my early years investigating the Catholic Church in Chicago, as did a cadre of Catholic reformers and Catholic journalists. Fact: the Catholic Church in Chicago completely partnered with the corrupt Democratic political machine and the Chicago mob's worst gangsters to make millions and accrue power. Let's go back a few decades. The church back then was led by Cardinal John P. Cody. He lived in a mansion and he had a mistress, effectively a wife, Helen Dolan Wilson, who he showered with a missing $1 million of church money that funded a Boca Raton vacation home and many other benefits. The Chicago Sun-Times was among the leaders in exposing this. A federal grand jury was close to indicting Cardinal Cody for embezzlement when he died. The Chicago Archdiocese was loaded with child predator priests. Scores of priests afflicted young boys and girls, and when they were exposed, the Archdiocese transferred them to out-of-the-way parishes such as in Arizona, where they would repeat offend. Last Thanksgiving 2025, the Chicago Diocese was hit with the so-called Predator Pipeline lawsuit, accusing the church of reassigning pervert priests to enable them to reoffend against new child victims. Lawyers said, quote, this wasn't just a series of bad decisions, it was a system. For decades, the Archdiocese relied on secrecy and reassignment, putting children in harm's way, close quote. The church was partners with the daily political machine, participating in their power and control schemes. Somehow, everywhere there was a Chicago public school, a few hundred feet away, there was a church parish property, generally a stately rector's home. In 2021, the Archdiocese listed $1 billion in cash and assets, including millions in banks. Yet the church serviced so many impoverished communities, especially on the South Side. But since the Al Capone days, the Catholic Church has partnered with the mob, America's most famous gangster, was regularly giving communion at a Southside church, St. Columbanus, now known as St. Moses the Black, down on 71st Street near the highway. Church archive may still contain lots of church weddings all over the Chicago area. Capone was so comfortable operating in the church, he ordered 2 murders on the church steps of Chicago's biggest cathedral, Holy Name. Capone's assassin, Jack Machine Gun McGurn, shot Dion O'Banion and later Jaime Weiss. The bullet holes are still visible at the cathedral entrance. A stronghold of the Chicago mob was the suburb of Cicero. One of the local enforcers was a big guy who later became known as the Gorilla. The Gorilla was Paul Marcinkus. Eventually, Marcinkus became the bodyguard for Pope Paul VI. Despite zero experience in banking, Pope Paul appointed Marcinkus secretary and then chairman of the Vatican Bank. The Vatican Bank was a mob front. In the 1970s, for example, they held the funds of Michelle Sedona, heavily involved in money laundering of heroin profits from both the Italian and American mobs. When Sedona's personal investment portfolio collapsed, the Vatican Bank reportedly lost some $80 million. The Vatican Bank also set up Banco Ambrosiano, which collapsed after discovering about $1.3 billion in missing money. In 1973, the heads of the Organized Crime and Racketeering section of the U.S. Department of Justice, William Ehrenwald and Bill Lynch, questioned Marcinkus in his Vatican office. Topic: his alleged delivery of $14.5 million in counterfeit bonds to the Vatican 2 years earlier. Italian grand juries wanted to indict Marcinkus, but the Pope demanded Vatican immunity. Eventually, Marcinkus was given a remote church post in Sun City, Arizona, where he died, leaving a $500,000 home and estate. His partner in crime, Robert Calvi, general manager of the bank Ambrosiana, was not so lucky. He lost the mob's money, and in 1982, the mob rubbed him out. The day after he was fired, Calvi's body was found hanging from the scaffolding beneath a bridge in London. He had 5 bricks in his pockets. Calvi's secretary jumped or was pushed to her death out of a 5-story window. Chief suspect in these deaths was fascist gangster Licio Gelli, who ran the secretive Italian Black Friars, a terrorist society known as P2. Gelli lost a lot of money when Bank Ambrosiana collapsed. He was arrested but then escaped and ultimately died peaceably in his home in Italy. At all times, the Chicago mob had a direct link to Pope Paul through their Cicero gangland stooge, Marcinkus the Gorilla. Oh, and did I mention that when Hitler came to power, Pope Pius XI wasted no time and on July 20, 1933, sealed a concordat with the Hitler regime to stay quiet during all Nazi activity. Article 16 binds all Catholic bishops to swear allegiance to the German Reich before assuming their church office and to not interfere with Reich policies. That's why the church said nothing when the camps were set up, when the Nuremberg laws were decreed, when Kristallnacht burned through the synagogues of Germany, and even during the war itself, which killed millions. And this Reich Concordat was never annulled. It's still in force. And let's remember that Hitler would have never gotten his early powers enacted on March 23rd, 1933, the so-called law to remedy the distress of the people and the Reich, and that Hitler's cabinet was empowered to enact laws without parliament or the president, had the Catholic Center parties, the Zentrum Party, not given all of their 11% of votes to elevate Hitler to dictator. The Zentrum Party was led by Monsignor Ludwig Kaas, who reported directly to the Vatican. The church was comfortable with fascists. In 1929, the church cut a similar deal with Benito Mussolini, who preceded the Fuhrer, plus a substantial relationship with Generalissimo Franco in fascist Spain. History also recalls that the Catholic Church was part and parcel of the most sadistic killing regime in the Holocaust in Croatia, where they joined with the Ustashi, which heinously murdered tens of thousands of innocent Jews and Serb Orthodox. The Ustashi gathered baskets of eyeballs. The unspeakable atrocities committed by the Ustashi are too blood-curdling to detail here, but they operated a concentration camp called Jasenovac, which was a magnitude more hellish than Auschwitz. It is thought that 80,000 Jews, Serbs, and others were murdered by the Ustashi in rituals too ghastly to describe. Franciscan monks carried out mass executions in the 3 villages near Banja Luka, where about 2,000 Serbs were slaughtered using gruesome physical methods. The Jasenovac camp, by the way, was overseen by Franciscan monk Miroslav Filipovic, who personally and brutally oversaw the murder of some 30,000 individuals, often tortured by horrid methods, and about 100 by his own hand. He wore his priestly garments while murdering. In 1946, Filipovic was tried for war crimes and hung. Although Filipovic was suspended and then expelled from his order, he nonetheless wore his Franciscan habit at the gallows. A truth commission after the war concluded that some hundreds of Catholic priests and monks were involved in the genocide. During this entire genocide, Pope Pius XII granted provisional recognition to the Ustashi and monitored their every activity via church contacts. Chief Ustashi Ante Pavlovich mainly worked through Cardinal Aloysius Stepanic, appointed by the church as the main contact. After the war, Chief Ustashi Pavlovich was given shelter in the Vatican and protected at various papal residences. He was smuggled into Italy and then to Argentina via the extensive church rat lines, which relocated Nazi war criminals to other countries where they could hide. In 2018, the Ustashi monsters were honored in a special Catholic Mass in Zagreb and another in Bleiburg. The World Jewish Congress wrote to Rome and the church and begged them to cancel it. Their pleas were ignored. I didn't have time to get to the Inquisition, so I offer this advice to a fellow Chicagoan, Pope Leo. You might think twice about declaring on behalf of God that my father's prayers and the prayers of the IDF won't be heard. You might look closer to home. This is Edwin Black.